All right, so we're doing another Logic session breakdown here. This is Let It Snow by myself and Sage Hunter. We had a lot of fun doing this song. It was a very quick project. I think we recorded the whole thing in about a week. We had a pretty clear idea of what we wanted to go for, using Dean Martin's version of the song as a reference point for the orchestration and licks and structure of the song. We thought this one would be pretty fitting because it's pretty easy to do as a duet. One session we kind of figured out, who's singing what and where do we sing together and all that kind of stuff. So that seemed to come together quite easily. We wanted to have the song be pretty timeless. Since we used Dean Martin's version as the reference, we wanted it to be very kind of throwback, sort of jazzy, very relaxed, and just like a nice, warm, cozy Christmas song. So this is what we came up with. Started recording the song on December 2nd of last year. It took about a week to record it. By the time it was released, I think it was Christmas Eve, which is way too late to have a Christmas song released. But the great thing about a Christmas song is you can promote it every year. So let's take a look here and see what we got up to. Let's start with drums like we always do. So this is my Ludwig Breakbeats drum kit, 16-inch kick drum, regular 14 by 5-inch snare, no toms, and then just a hi-hat and a ride very selectively. So this is a super simple stripped down kit. Here's what the drums sound like on their own. I think I had a pretty simple microphone setup on this. We used outside kick mic, batter, which doubles as the snare bottom. There's a little bit of sound that gets in there from that, and this is what that sounds like. Didn't even use the inside kick microphone here at all. Just the outside mic and the kick batter quite heavily used. Almost no processing on the overhead and rooms, just a little bit of gentle compression and some transient shaping. The shoulder mic, that's a cool one. So this is kind of where a lot of the sound came from. So here's the shoulder mic on its own. And that's kind of a funny thing to throw it all the way over to the one side. I wanted to get a spread of the kit. So that shoulder mic being thrown off to that side, and then we've got our overheads, which are a little more spread. Hats off to the side there. And even the snare close mic off to the side as well. Kind of off to the right a little bit. Bass guitar here is, I believe, it was my Ampeg Scrambler pedal. This is what the bass sounds like on its own. Skip ahead here. It's a Fender Jazz Bass with flat wound strings on it to get that kind of old school sound. And then a little bit of a spreading width on this, and everything below 250 hertz stays mono, but everything above that, wanted to kind of spread it. Again, with such few instruments in the song, we wanted to still kind of get the size that we're used to hearing in the stereo width and that kind of stuff. So spreading things out as much as I can here to have things stay balanced and wide and leave room for the vocals. Next up here, we've got the guitar, which is essentially one guitar track with a couple of fun little extras. So here's what that sounds like. Now, the cool thing about this guitar is it is just a DI into the Neural DSP archetype Tim Henson plugin set up like this. So what is that? 11 o'clock on the gain, no bass, a bit of extra mids, treble and presence where they are a master. But the thing about this amp is the lead amp, and it gets quite distorted if you let it really drive into it. But with this input gain pulled back all the way, not all the way, but 12 dB, you get a lot more of a controlled, still textured sound, but it leans more into that clean territory, which is helpful. I also used, you can't really see it here. There we go, this awesome guitar. So it's a Ibanez hollow body with, again, flat wound strings on it for that kind of jazzy sound. I thought it was the coolest thing ever to put a hollow body like this into a high gain amp simulation plugin like that. and end up with a jazzy sound was kind of cool. So I think it does exactly what I needed. No fancy settings, no pedals, no anything like that. Going into cab with 2 mics on it, the 57 emulation and then the 121 ribbon emulation as well. That is all just sending to a little bit of a reverb. The reverb on its own sounds like this. So you'll notice with this, the main guitar sound is off to the left and the reverb send is off to the right. So that's, again, another way to sort of try to spread the sound out a little bit. Just have everything sound a little bit bigger since there's only one guitar part. Having it take up a little bit more space like that was kind of the goal. So by having a little bit of 40 millisecond pre-delay and a 40 millisecond attack, so it just delays the attack and the beginning of the reverb, that kind of makes it sound like you've got the guitar hits first and then the reverb follows after. So it's this sort of, it's almost like a ripple, like a wave effect that it's doing when it plays. So here's the guitar, again, with the reverb, and then I'll shut it off and you'll be able to hear the difference here. So here's with. So it's a pretty subtle thing, but it just allows it to spread it out and make it sound like you're actually in a room instead of just a sterile DI guitar recording. There's a couple of little tricks and stuff in here. This little harmonic thing. So this harmonics thing does this. And I wanted to put that there. It was playable to come up and hit the harmonic, but this way I was able to have that harmonic ring out over top of the next chord instead of having to choke it and keep it on the same performance. So again, it's just things where it still reads as one guitar part with some effects, but these are little overdubs to make it sound a little more fun. Let's keep going here. We've got a bunch of things going on with orchestration, woodwinds, some violins, pizzicato, some harp, glockenspiel, marimba. So all of these together is what's kind of playing the interesting little parts. So this is the intro. So all those little things together, the piccolo with the staccato articulation, the flute, by layering the sounds, they end up sounding a little bit bigger. If we just play the piccolo, for example, or just the flute, it's fine, but adding the 3 of them together just again makes it sound like there's actually a group of people playing this. Something to note as well, all of the orchestration sounds in this, the piccolo, the flute, the oboe, even the percussion elements, I think the glockenspiel here, the marimba, everything is from the BBC Symphony Orchestra, the inexpensive version. I think you can get it for $50 or even free. I think I got this for free if you fill out a survey. So all of the orchestrated sounds in here are from BBC Symphony Orchestra core library. Everything is in here. And let's see here. I've got soothe on this just to kind of tame some of the resonances and the whistles, a little bit of harshness, especially when you've got that a stack of those woodwinds playing the same notes together. It gets a little bit harsh on some of the notes. So this just kind of smooths things out. That's the only plugin I've got on the whole sound. So everything you're hearing is just the programmed articulations within BBC Symphony Orchestra, and a couple of them are going to my long reverb here just for additional ambience. But there's nothing going on my mix page here. It's all just a little bit of soothe on the whole thing, on all the tracks combined, and a little bit of a reverb throw. So it's very, very minimal processing on that. I think that's a pretty good representation of the symphony orchestra stuff here. It's just they're awesome sounds at a really great price. So check that out for sure. This was one of those situations too where we didn't really want to change much from the original. I think it's one of those things when you have a familiar song, you kind of have to be careful about what you change and make yours. I always think like if it makes it more unique and kind of fitting the artist, then it's okay to change. If it gets a little too experimental, especially with a classic Christmas song like this, it can get sort of weird and unenjoyable for a lot of people. So we're all trying to make things unique and interesting as artists, but I think there's a certain point, especially with covers, where if you go too far, it loses the charm that the song had and why people like to listen to it in the first place. Something that we did take that I think is really cool, getting into vocals now here. So there's in the first bridge, the flutes play this. Really simple line, but super interesting over top of the chords if I mute all the vocals. So nice. And what we decided to do later on the next bridge is rather than the flutes playing that again, we thought, let's get Sage to sing those same notes. So we created this part, 3 notes, based almost exactly off of the way that the flutes were playing, and came up with these oohs, it's a subtle thing in there, but this is probably my favorite part that we threw into the song. Here's what just the oohs sound like on their own. In context of the song with them quite loud here, just to get the sense of what's going on here. When we finally kiss goodnight, how I hate going out in the store. And then in context of how they're actually mixed, sounds like this, nice and subtle. When we finally kiss goodnight, how I hate going out in the store. But if you... It's just so easy and nice to listen to. That was our own little flair that we threw in there just to kind of make that a little more interesting. At the time of this as well, we kind of paused from working on Sage's debut EP, In the Clouds. You can check it out everywhere now. We paused that to work on this for a week over Christmas time. And we kind of, since we were in her EP mode, we were able to kind of take some of the concepts that we used on that and create some of these simple little arrangement ideas like this vocal part. I just love how that turned out. It's so cool. Into the main vocals of the song now. The way that we wanted to do this is kind of, figure out how we could split it up as a duet so that each of us could sing equal parts lead and harmony. So the way that we decided on that, I knew that I kind of wanted to start the song just with the wide open verse, kind of get into it. Plus, if you hear Sage's voice first, mine doesn't sound so good. So I wanted to set the tone with mine, and then it's even better when she comes in here in the second verse. So I started off, she takes it, we harmonize a little bit, and whatever. You can listen to the song to kind of hear how all that panned out. I think my favorite part is when Sage takes the lead and I harmonize in the verse 3 here. I'll just play that section. All the way home I'll be warm. Oh, the fire is slowly dying, and my dear, we're still goodbye. As long as you love me so, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. So nice. I love those harmonies. This was a really interesting thing to try to arrange the harmonies for, because I hadn't really heard obvious harmonies for this that I had really enjoyed in the past. And I knew there was kind of a cool way to make it work both within our ranges, because we, obviously different ranges. Sage is singing this octave above me. So switching between the harmony parts, trying to figure out where those lie within our ranges in a way that still takes care of the harmonies that are needed. There's a good example of that here, I think right at the end. As long as you love me so, let it... So although Sage is walking down, my vocal stays on the same note, which if there was a 3-part harmony, for example, or more voices, you wouldn't really be able to do that, because somewhere you'd be stepping on the toes of another part, you'd be singing the same note. But this allows a lot more freedom, and it's kind of an interesting thing to me, at least. I like hearing harmonies that either move perfectly with the vocal or sometimes stay on the same note and have the same effect, complementing the lead melody. So that's a cool spot for me. No parallel processing at all. Everything is in line on these vocal channels. In this case, we've got a little bit of a preamp thing, using this for some gain. This is the Slate VMR, so this kind of acts as like a rack of gear into this kind of custom series EQ, just to subtract a few things that weren't necessary, and then into a distressor model and an LA2 model. Let's see what these are doing for compression here on my vocal. Weather outside is frightful, but the fire is so delightful. And since we've no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. It doesn't show. So very gentle on all that. It's really not doing a lot. Mostly just kind of allowing me to make up some gain. I did record all these vocals on the Warm Audio WA47 tube mic. It's going for an affordable version of that vintage U47 microphone. The whole thing was just to have a little bit of vibe going on. I'm totally jumping all over the place here. So let's do the reverb on these vocals. Let's look at Sage's vocal here. So this is very minimal, 1 second, 40 millisecond pre-delay, and very subtle room reverb. So basically all this does is it just kind of, again, makes it sound less sterile without having it sound like there's a bunch of crazy vocal effects going on. Doesn't show signs of stopping, and I brought some corn for coffee. The lights are turned way down. So yeah, all it does, again, it just puts it in a room. Just a little bit. Everything just has to have a little bit of vibe, a little bit of space to kind of put things in their place. It's pretty easy with a simple production song like this to have everything stand out already, but if we can put everything in a little box in a space using reverbs, it just kind of makes it sound even more believable. Again, a little bit of this widening thing, nothing below 250, and we've got a very, very minimal mix here, but it's just something to kind of make the vocals sound a little bit more exciting. A little bit of decapitator on the vocals as well, just to give them a little bit of edge. This is being used very, very subtly. Full mix, but very little drive, really nothing going on. It just, again, kind of helps it feel a little bit more present. A lot of the sort of feel and vibe, I guess you could say, of the song comes from this stereo bus. There was very, very minimal processing on everything individually, and a lot of it just kind of came together here. So it looks like I'm kind of shelving off some of the low end, adding some highs, whatever, just a little bit of overall shaping there. And then this plugin, Isotope Vinyl, this just shaves off a ton of the high frequencies. So it takes it from kind of a modern super hi-fi recording, and it tames it down to sound a little more old school. So here, let's do this middle verse here again, just because it's so nice. So without the plugin, it sounds like this. Fire is slowly dying, and my dear, we're still goodbye. As long as you love me so, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. So to me, like, that makes a pretty huge difference on totally shaving off the high frequencies of the vocals. The S's are smoother. All that kind of stuff really sits in the pocket in context of this type of sort of timeless production with this plugin on the whole thing. It's like you're recording it, direct to vinyl. This does a really good job of capturing that feel. To exaggerate that, if I play this verse again to show an extreme version of what this is doing, if I turn up this wear control here, you'll hear what I'm talking about. Fire is slowly dying, and my dear, we're still goodbye. As long as you love me so, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. So essentially what it's doing is just it tries to mimic a physical deviation and imperfection in records, especially, over time, and if they have lots of play. We can also take it back in time. I think this 2000s thing, I didn't want to crush it too much, but if I play the same verse here and we go down through the years, you can use these different modes to really get back to the 1930s if you want. So let's watch this here, and I'll flip through the years. Fire is slowly dying, and my dear, we're still goodbye. As long as you love me so, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. Fire is slowly dying. So it sounds really, really old school, like the early days. My dear, we're still goodbye. As long as you love me so, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. And then that kind of brings back the fullness of it again while softening those high frequencies. So that was a huge part of the vibe of this song. Another EQ here, so taking off a little more low end with a bit of a resonant peak here just to get some thickness around kind of 60 to 80 there by the looks of it. But I'm cutting off everything below 48 hertz, so there's really not much sub information down there. And then again at 18K, just cutting all that stuff off to make it really tight and timeless and not hi-fi like a lot of modern recordings. And then keep going with the whole vintage analog thing. Although this is digital, we've got a tape simulator here, which if the track's playing, it looks kind of cool.
I slowly dying and my...
That's kind of a silly thing. This is made by Slate Digital. I love this machine, typically on the same setting, 2-inch 16th track, and then 15 IPS. This tape plugin usually lives on my stereo bus. In this case, I pushed into it a little bit harder. Let's actually see how these are hitting.
I slowly dying and my dear...
Pretty standard, just to kind of get it to hit around 0 there. That adds a good amount of vibe as well. Actually, let's show you. So if we were to push this, this is what it does.
I slowly dying and my dear, we're still goodbye. As long as you love me, so let it...
So it just brings in the sort of tape distortion, I guess you could get from analog tape. It's pretty amazing the effects and stuff you can get in the computer just by using some software like that. And no, it's probably not like the real thing, but it's a similar feel to the song where it gets close enough, all things considered. Ultimately, we're not living in the 1930s, so I don't want it to sound or expect it to sound exactly like that. I think that's unrealistic. So using modern tools to kind of shape things to be the best of both worlds. Beyond that, a little bit of bus compression over the whole thing, which is, I think, maybe the only compression going on here. There's almost none on the drums.
I slowly dying and my dear, we're still goodbye. As long as you...
Yeah, maybe getting a little bit of gain reduction on the kick drum there. Then just a little bit of limiting, not much. I don't even think this is doing anything either.
I slowly dying and my dear...
No, not even close to doing anything. I just wanted to get a little bit of level from that. In the moment, it seemed like a good idea. And then Saturn here. This is an interesting thing. So this is my own little preset here called Open Top. This is kind of taken from Eric Valentine. I stole this trick from him. So what he does is taking everything, in this case above 4K, and driving it like you would tape to get sort of an urgent, to use Eric's words, like an urgent, close feeling top end. And it kind of smooths it off even more. So there's multiple stages of this sort of tape and vinyl and different things going on. I'll play the contrast with all of these shut off, and then we can see how much difference on the overall song this stereo bus has. But this just, again, kind of smooths off the top end, but also makes it feel a little bit closer. I like everything to feel like it's right at the edge of the speakers or even closer. So although we're trying to make this sound kind of old school on the top end, like it's not all modern and hi-fi, there's still a bit of that closeness and I guess the intimate sound that I still find kind of interesting. And then just into Pro L2 by FabFilter. I'm not going to turn it on. Sure, I'll turn it on here. Let's go out. So I'm going to take this down about 8 dB. So here's what it's doing.
I slowly dying and my dear, we're still goodbye. As long as you love me, so let it snow, let it snow, let it snow.
So getting a little bit of limiting. What is that? Oh man, up to 5 dB, which is whatever. That's just where it felt best. So a little bit of limiting, adding 8 dB of gain into that just to kind of get it up to a commercial-ish level. Certainly not trying to compete with volume at all here, but again, just to have things sounding present and close and full without pushing it like you would a pop track or anything like that. So here's the comparison now of the same verse. I'll shut off all these plugins and then turn them back on, and we'll see what that sounds like. So with everything off.
I slowly dying, and my dear, we're still goodbye. As long as you love me, so let it snow, let it snow, let it snow.
So it's interesting because it's kind of, it just generally shapes the whole thing by the combination of a bunch of small moves. It sounds like there's more high frequency, but there's actually less. It's kind of cut off on the top and the mids are boosted, and it's just a whole series of shaping the song to kind of be clear and open sounding and that kind of thing. There we have it. I hope that's a cool look into the song. Thanks for joining me on this one. Go listen to the song if you haven't yet. Add it to your Christmas playlist. Let us know what you think, and have a very Merry Christmas. Thanks, guys.